Hi, Jesse here with eTrailer. Today we'll be taking a look at and I'll show you how to install the Firestone Coil-Rite air helper springs on our 2019 Ram 1500. If you're someone who is planning on using your truck as a truck, and what that means is loading it or towing with it, then you're definitely going to want to eliminate sag in the rear end when you're doing that, and these air helper springs are going to help you with that. We'll take a look at what they look like when they're installed on your vehicle. As you can see here, they'll fit inside your existing coil springs. So that's really nice. It still gives you the option to later down the road add on a aftermarket bump stop if you feel like the air helper springs aren't enough. But really they just slip into the springs and then you have to run a air line back to the tailgate where you are able to fill them up. One nice thing about these is that they are adjustable as opposed to those bump stop options that I mentioned earlier. So when you are driving around town completely unloaded, you can drop the air pressure in the bags to the minimum of 5 psi, and that's just going to feel like the truck came from the factory. You're not going to notice them there at all. But when you are planning on hooking up to a trailer or hauling anything, you can bump them up to the maximum of 70 if you need to, and that's going to prevent that sag that I was talking about earlier. As for the install, these are pretty difficult. I've seen some mixed reviews from people posting on our website. Some people are saying that they're super easy, they slid right in, but then others are having issues like I did. We really struggled to get them slipped into the coil springs, but if you just take your time, maybe have a couple friends over to help you out, you can definitely get it done. If you don't think you can install these yourself, maybe you don't have the time, the space, or the tools to do so, then feel free to check out our dealer locator. Speaking of those reviews, if you have installed these yourself, maybe you have some tips or tricks you'd like to share those with us, please leave those below. But other than that, if you want to see how these got installed, then stick around and I'll show you how we got ours set up. Our first step will be to get the air out of our airbag. So I took the cap off. I'm just going to squeeze down on it while pushing in on the valve stem core. The instructions say to take the valve stem core all the way out, but I like doing it like this because when I'm ready to change my position, it's not going to fill back up on me. So I'm just going to kind of squeeze this like a roll of toothpaste. And just get as much air as you can. Now what I've done is kind of folded it into a taco shape as much as I could. I'll take a zip tie, get that tied around it. That's just going to hold it into this shape. Once we get it about halfway into the coil spring, we'll end up cutting this off. But for now, it's just going to hold this how we want it. Now for lifting the truck up, we need the springs to be as relaxed as possible. It's just going to give us as much room as possible. So if you're on the ground, it's pretty easy. You would just support it by the frame and make sure that your axle's hanging as much as possible. Since we're using these lifts, we just have to use a pull jack to get it up in the air. We don't have the tires quite off the ground, but just relaxed enough. I can tell that we're as far down as we'll go because I can kind of move the coil spring. Now we'll take some soapy water and just spray down, try to lubricate it as much as possible. Just getting these airbags into these springs is not super easy. We just want as much help as we can get. Now I did remove our spare tire and there was a heat shield here, just a few 10mm screws to get that removed. Don't necessarily have to do that, it's just so we can get a better view of the spring on our camera. But we'll take our airbag now, starting with the bottom end, which is the end without the stem. We're going to go to the coil as high up as we can reach and just try to squeeze that in there. Now it's just a matter of working it down into position. I may have to cut my zip tie now just to get past this point. All right, so it took us quite a bit of just kind of working it in and working it from all sides. You can use something to pry against it. Just make sure it's not going to be sharp, something that's going to damage the bag. But we got it to this point, so I should be able to just push the top in for the most part. Once we have that entire assembly in there, I'm just going to pump a little bit of air in it, and that should even everything out or spread everything out and make it look right. So before we put any air into that, I want to get this spacer placed on top of it, just in case once I get air into it, I won't be able to fit this in between. So this is going to go on top of our bag. So we'll just try to slide this into place. Just be careful not to put too much pressure on that valve stem on top. It's kind of tricky with how our bag ended up situated, but now with our spacer up in place, we'll need to thread this piece on. This is what will connect our hoses to our bags. So what I'll do is just kind of lift that spacer out of my way if I can. And try to get that threaded on. Once you got that fitting nice and snug, it doesn't have to be super tight, but there's a little rubber gasket in there. As long as you have it tight enough to kind of push down on that, it should be good. We'll take an airline tubing. We are using a junction and then running one line back. If you were planning on having 2 fill ports on the outside, then you would just cut the line that you have in half. But I kind of measured ours out so that we can have a union right here in the middle. But we'll have to reach up above our spring perch. This will be pretty tricky. And kind of guide it down. But once it's down there, I should be able to grab it through the springs. And what we're going to do is push the airline down into that fitting. You'll kind of feel it click, and that means it's engaged. Also, once it's engaged, maybe tug on it, make sure it's not going to come off. We'll just have to guide this towards that fitting. So it was pretty tricky, but I was able to feed the line in from this side of the frame and access that top hole and then push our airline down. So at this point, we'll just repeat that same process on the other side, and then we'll get our airlines ran, and I'll show you how we did that. Before I plugged in my union, which again is something that's sold separately, it's not super necessary, but before I plugged it in, I just wanted to show you a better view of what these look like. We're just going to push it straight down in, and then you'll feel it click, and that means it's locked in and there should be no leaks. As far as the mounting location for your valves, you could use this included bracket and just zip tie it to the hitch maybe, but we're going to actually have one of our stems poking out this license plate hole here. So I'm just going to drill this out to 5/16. And once I get my lines ran all the way back, we'll be mounting our stem right here, and it's also going to hold their license plate into place. So I went ahead and pushed our line into this valve stem, and then I poked it through that hole. We just have to remember that the order will be washer, then push it through the hole, then you'll put another washer on that end and top it off with a nut. That's a 12mm nut. Just tighten it down nice and snug. So we ran our 2 lines into our union here. If you're not using this, then most likely you would just follow the frame rails. But from there, we just went right down the middle, staying up above where the spare tire goes. And you will have quite a bit of extra. I recommend just leaving that coiled up out of the way, and I'll zip tie everything down to make sure nothing falls down. But yeah, from there it just goes back to our valve stem that we just showed you, And at this point, we are ready to get it filled up, and then we'll spray all of our connections down with some soapy water to make sure there's no leaks. If there is leaks, you'll see bubbles start to come out, and that just means you'll have to maybe pop your line out and recut it. And to do that, you would just push in on this centerpiece and pull your hose out, and then you can check and see if maybe you have a burr on your hose. Once you've ensured that you have no leaks, that's going to do it for our look at and installation of the Firestone Coil-Rite air helper springs on our 2019 Ram 1500.